Instead of like these specialized apps I buy as a person or whatever, I just have a platform or some place where I can go make whatever little utilities I need. So it's a whole lot of everything. I'm not building this to sell for other people, which is where a lot of other questions and concerns come up. I'm not trying to run a business. I'm just trying to answer my own question. This is super interesting because now it's I'm going to build the exact thing I need when I need it.
Hi, I'm Adam Zimman.
I'm Heidi Waterhouse.
I'm Kim Harrison.
And I'm James Governor.
You're listening to The Third Loop, a podcast where we explore how changing technology impacts users through three lenses: the builder, the consumer, and sometimes the impartial observer. The Third Loop is brought to you by Heavybit, the leading investor in enterprise infrastructure. For more information, visit heavybit.com.
Hi, I'm Betty Junod. Thanks for having me, you guys. I would say I'm tech curious, tech optimist, tech enthusiast. Been in marketing, helping talk about what it is, these magical things that people are building, and trying to make it understandable for regular humans.
Absolutely. And something that caught our eye, and we wanted to kind of specifically talk with you about, or at least a point of starting, was you wrote a blog post about what happens in this world of agentic code generation when you start to think about your applications and the users or user base of those applications. In the marketing world, we talk about ideal customer profile. And you raise this point of, well, what happens if your ideal customer profile is one person? And, that was something that was really intriguing to us. And so why don't you tell us, give those that haven't had a chance to read the blog post, we will put a link in the show notes, but a little bit of a brief recap and also what you were thinking about kind of as you were kind of coming up with that idea.
It's kind of like my journey in exploring all this new stuff. And I'll say, like I said, I say tech enthusiast, but I am in marketing. And I'm one of those marketing people that have always been in marketing, never coded before. Never did any of that stuff, but instead I always sat next to an engineer or a product manager or what have you and just said, what is this thing you're building? Show me, right? Maybe I could get to a place where I could demo the thing myself, right? Depending on what the product is. But the idea of building software was something that was always just, it's like jumping over the canyon, right? And there's this other side of the canyon where, what's a terminal? CLI, I've seen it. I know what these are conceptually. I know what they are physically, but I never learned that language. So it's learning a foreign language that I never learned. And it just happens that those words build something that people can kind of touch and interact with. That was always a gap. I had lots of ideas. I was also very frustrated with some of the software tools that, I had maybe acquired either personally or through work for my job. And the most interesting thing is with what we have with agentic coding is I can go to one of these tools and say, hey, I want this, and just write it out. And it gives me something. And then I keep playing around with it. So the idea of that I can serve myself, and the barrier to entry is not, hey, you're going to have to spend all this time to learn the whole language and then understand architecturally what that means. What ports do you need to open or not, or this or blah, blah. Who cares? If it's just for me, who cares? It's just a matter of what my credit card can handle. And I built an app. I think I had 4 people use it, and it's 19 cents for the day.
Reasonable cost.
Yeah. I'm not building this to sell for other people, which is where a lot of other questions and concerns come up. I'm not trying to run a business. I'm just trying to answer my own question.
Well, at the end of the day, that was, kind of, I think, one could argue that the vast majority of software is, kind of being built to enable people to, do a task, do a thing. Whether that's for entertainment purposes or business value, doesn't really matter. They're just trying to accomplish something. They're trying to, get something done. And so the question is, if you were able to build this thing that accomplished the task that you had at hand, I would argue that that's of just as much, if not greater value to you than, going and procuring something from, another company.
No, 100%.
Okay, but what's the app do?
So I can't remember which app I may have put in a little job search app in there. But one of the things I did build recently is, as a marketing leader, the hardest question to answer is what's our current share of voice and sentiment And it's really hard because it's hard to do. And it's something that you maybe get a once a quarter report from your PR firm because it's hard to do. And it's also something that is like, there's tools out there that track social sentiment, what have you. I've just never been, and a lot of those tools go in great depth, but it's kind of like sometimes like your executive leadership doesn't want to go through all the depth. They want a snapshot and they want to know like, oh my God, somebody posted something. Now it's going viral. What are we doing about it? Do you know what I mean? They just want snapshots so that they know that like everybody has kind of tabs on the business and are reacting to real-time information. So the thing I built was something called, the app actually named itself Brand Pulse. I'm like, not bad. But it's a 3-tab dashboard effectively. One is the current state of the company or whatever, like, the coverage, red, yellow, green on that coverage, and then pulling up a set of articles or things and when it's covered that are the most engaged. Because I don't care about all the coverage. I care about what's the ones that people are picking up, right? And most engaged would mean like likes, shares, and comments. And then like a little bit of like risk or opportunity because it'll scan the comments and say like, hey, the comments are actually like trending bad or these seem good, but it's being well received. The second tab is really just a competitive snapshot. Who are my competitors? Who do I think are my competitors? And then say, what kind of action is happening with those companies? And then give me like a sentiment on those announcements effectively. Again, looking at by how engaged they are. If my competitor did a bunch of announcements, but literally no one's picked it up, there's been no comments, then it's just a yellow. Like, don't even worry about it. It will say like, hey, your competitor announced something and it's getting a lot of traction. Here's the thing that said, here's what like is a potential risk or opportunity and an idea for how to address. Mm-hmm. And then the last tab was just, what's the conversation? So scanning social media sites, Reddit, Stack, X, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, and based on a set of keywords that I provided, like what's the conversation happening with those?
That seems incredibly useful.
Yeah, I like how Betty refers to this as something that's like only useful to her.
Yeah. I'm like, as a fellow marketer, I'm like, hello.
Oh,
yeah. Can we test it?
I'll give you the link so y'all can play with it. The thing that I think about, and especially with the book y'all wrote, is the minute I gave it to somebody else, what if it also did this? And I'll be like, get out of here. I am not here. I am here to deal with your subscription license, your subscription costs, and then and feature management. That is not what this is about. I am happy to share with you the app prompts. And so you can run it yourselves inside your company, whatever, if you're using whatever tools you all are using, and then you can edit it to your heart's content.
I mean, I think the thing that's, really fascinating to me is that you have built this for the use case that you have and, for something that is, obviously very much in your domain, but the general idea of it and the general, premise of it, I've heard, been in numerous conversations with people that are like building actual products that are doing exactly the same, kind of like underlying architecture or model to be able to do analysis and feedback for product development, like thinking about like what features are next, or, like whether or not new features that were released were being used. Yes, it has, marketing value obviously as well, but thinking about it from a product and development side in terms of like, where should we be prioritizing our next investment? It's the same questions, right? And ultimately, like, I think that a lot of times it's the same data sources even.
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about it like, we can't figure out how well our book is selling. I wonder how I could tweak this to like figure out how well the book is doing. Is anybody talking about it? Is anybody reading it?
Yeah.
But all of these are not the thing you wrote. And I think the ideal customer profile of one idea is super interesting because we're saying what is useful just to me and what if I make a thing that isn't a product? Which is so antithetical to the way we've been thinking for 20 years that I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Well, it's not only what if it's not a product, but it starts to get into that kind of like weird fuzzy space of I just asked the robot to do a thing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And like, I don't actually care how it does it. I just want to have some confidence in the response that it's generating an outcome that is reasonable in terms of trust and, kind of accuracy, and then is useful to me for answering the questions or doing the task that I have at hand.
100%. And what's funny is I made this app. I've been playing around with what this app could look like. I've tried the same app prompts on multiple different platforms to see how different the outputs were. And it was funny to catch some of them in lies, like, hey, this looks like fake information. They're like, you're right. You caught me in a lie. I'm like, but the UI looks nice, thanks. But, this was like February. February, I was making this into an app, just like, because I was like, okay, that's what you do. You vibe code an app. Now I think like, hey, you know what? This could actually be like an agent and a set of skills.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point about like it's an assistant doing some things, right? Doing the research for you and kind of giving you a summary. And like, the thing is now like, you're just going to get a notification on some like, here's some hotspots to investigate. Maybe these can be like topics for the next meeting, like a team check-in you have, like, hey, so that everyone's on the same page with something. But now it's like the thinking is different. It's like, maybe it's just not an app. Maybe these are just some utilities. And what I have is instead of like these specialized apps I buy as a person or whatever, I have a platform or some generic place where I can go make whatever little utilities I need.
Amazing. What does this have to do with progressive delivery? That's my big question.
And in some senses, like I'm in complete control of what's delivered to me. So, like the stuff in your book about like giving people the right thing at the right time, when you're thinking about a company building a product, they're spending a lot of time trying to rationalize an ICP as where is the overlapping Venn diagram? If we say our product is for IT operators, that's a broad landscape, right? And then from that, you have to say like the overlapping place is the ICP and problem area we're going to solve, and we're going to build a product for that. And then it's like, do they want all the features that you're making for them when you're shipping them? This is super interesting because it's like, I'm going to build the exact thing I need when I need it. I control when I get it delivered and consumed. I am pretty regularly futzing with my app as an example, and I'm trying different ways that it can behave. Like I said, should it be an app dashboard? Should it be an agent? Should it be skills? I don't know. The tasks that run, I'm playing with that as the underlying technology changes, enabling technology changes, but I control when it's delivered to me. I think that makes it interesting from a progressive standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it, like we're talking about the whole name of this podcast is Third Loop, thinking about user adoption. And, when you are the only user and you are wanting something new and you get to control what that is and when you get it or when you want it, it's kind of like, I think this is the kind of extreme example of that notion of paying attention to the third loop.
Mm-hmm.
You're owning it. Everything you're doing is about the needs that you have and the outcomes that you're trying to create.
Betty, you said you tried different platforms. Where did you land on as a, self-confessed non-software developer for the platform that would enable you to build and maintain and extend an application? Who's getting your few dollars?
Like everybody else, I'm giving a few dollars to a lot of places right now because nothing is free, truly, if you want to have any control of your, the settings on what you can do with the information and your usage. But besides that, the app itself is running on Google AI Studio. When I first built this, I was vibing with AI Studio, Claude, and Kiro. And just each one of those are built for kind of a slightly different knowledge base of the person using it. Kiro is very much a developer IDE. Mm-hmm. You can vibe within it, but like silly thing, like I was like, what's a home directory? Because it was telling me to do these things. And I was like, I gave it prompts, but it wanted me to do some things that were very much like install like Node. I'm like, at least I know what that is. But imagine if it was like, I don't know, like your mom, you know what I mean? Because you can do some stuff with like this little chat thing, this AI chat thing. Unless your mom was in engineering, they're gonna be like, what's Node? Or if you're not in engineering at all, what is Node, right? It wanted all these like CLI tools. Claude wanted less of that, but at a first pass, it made beautiful UI and some of the things I'm like, hey, I think this is fake information.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was like with Google, like it had the build it and then I can preview it. Claude also had a preview mode in the desktop. And then with Google, I could just publish and then it's live. Could you imagine if I then had to figure out or actually go through the process of like, let me get some infrastructure, let me configure my stuff so that I don't
Where's my Netlify?
let me mess up like, securing access to my, servers. Like, good God, that's asking for whole other set of problems. So
Does it explain any of that, or does it just give you like, here you go play? Or does it try to teach you what it did?
I have asked some of the tools, like, how do I do these things and that thing? Google was the most seamless with their AI studio that it is meant for non-developers to go there.
Mm.
Let me put it that way.
Mhm.
The other ones do give explanation, but they're still very engineering developer centric. The idea to me is like, so again, this is company building something, broadcasting out to the universe. Who are you really building for? I think when we say vibe coding, the idea that it's still coding means the thinking is still that it's developer constructs. Like, why do I need to figure out like which directory, packages, this, that? Thank you for telling me that you're making these choices. I don't know what these are, nor do I care. I will say once I published on Google AI Studio, I then got access to another little icon that I clicked on and I said, oh dear God, I'm now in like some GCP like management dashboard and I want none of that except for the billing to see how much this app is costing.
I wonder if you can turn that down. Like, shush.
Yeah. Well, it's I have to click on it. So that's, I mean, from a progressive standpoint, it's there, but it's not forced upon me.
Mm.
And then during the deploy, they did say like, put in your credit card, of course, because now I'm going to start consuming compute. And then it gave me some options to pick like cost guardrails.
Oh, it did.
Nice.
Yeah.
So by default, it's like, don't max out my credit card. You can actually have that be a thing.
I did it like it's a burner cloud account. It's like a prepaid amount. And once that's done, that's it. But yeah, you can set limits on like no more than this much a day or whatever. So from the perspective of like, who is this new universe for? Yeah.
How much time do you spend messing around with your app? Like, is it a bit addictive? Are you saying to your spouse, your kid, sorry, I just gotta fix my app? How addictive is this being in control of the thing? How much time are you spending with your application?
So I will block out time for it within the day just to do this stuff because with the way that my attention works, if it's not in my calendar, then it's just real free range and that could be problematic. So I make time like, hey, I will do research and I will play within these 2-hour chunks. It can very quickly suck you in. You know how people talk about how addicting doom scrolling is and social, like a social algorithm. It's like that, but instead of just watching, it is chatting with you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like this always a positive feedback loop. And so in that sense, like you can get going. And the other day, I meant to just make one edit or run a task on something to help with some research. And then the initial like plan was like, oh, I don't know. So I'm like, here, let's do this other thing. I got stuck in like, I don't know, it was like an hour and a half of like, basically like, no, that's still not right. That's still not right. I'm super frustrated, but that's interesting that the thing you did give me is interesting, but that's still not what I wanted. And so then it's like, I'm like, we can stop this now kind of thing. Like you're both like fascinated and super frustrated sometimes. And then there's other times where 2 sentences and you're like, whoa.
Yeah, it's like talking to your favorite like ADHD friend. You know, like we wanted to know what they wanted for lunch. And then all of a sudden you feel like you just like received the complete history on submarines.
Yes. So it could be like, and I'm guilty of like bouncing topics. So it's kind of like talking to myself all day.
Adam, do you have friends that are not ADHD? Like what?
I mean, I prefer to them as acquaintances.
I'm in this industry a fair bit. And I mean, good luck with finding people that don't have some issues with their attention.
We're enthusiastic, okay?
Exactly.
All right. I have a follow-up question for Betty. How much time do you spend playing with the tool versus reading the outcomes of the tool?
Reading the outcomes meaning like what? The
Right. The thing that you're asking it to research. Like, how do you feel that reward ratio is?
input is it's for a usable thing, I'd say like 75 to like 85% thing. The lift is low, very low, in my opinion. I'm using it right now for a fair amount of like, research, as well as like I use the tool the app that I'm talking about. I use that app quite a bit. Someone tells me about a company I've never heard about, boop, 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 and I go through and click through all the things.
So yeah, you're getting more value out of it than you're spending time on it.
Yeah. Where I have been frustrated is really the stuff is moving so fast. And so it's like learning the new thing. So I take something I already knew or something I already built and see like how would it work in this new construct. And that's where I'm getting super frustrated because it's new. And God, a note to progressive delivery, if you're using Claude Desktop, like you have to relaunch that thing multiple times a day.
Jeez.
That's how much they're releasing, right? So you may have like 2 days of no releases, no updates. And then in the same day, you may have 2 or 3.
Does it tell you, like, by the way, you should reload me?
Yeah, there's like a little thing that pops up on the bottom corner that says relaunch, new version.
Yeah. It's a very persistent ask. It's not like hey, if you want. It's like, no, you should do this now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I see my frustration more as it's part of the learning process. It's not like, I'm not mad. It's just something I don't know yet. And until I learn it enough to then think about how I can use it for myself or what I need to change about my prior way of doing things to take advantage of this new thing. That's the frustration because that's just me being human and trying to change.
Can I ask you a question, Betty, about people telling you no? So we, on another podcast in this series, have discussed the fact that, really sometimes it's good to say no. So I'm a parent, so I definitely appreciate that there is a value in saying no to people. So here's the thing, in the sense of progressive delivery and trying to understand, I mean, there's an aspect of, just because you could doesn't mean you should. And as, in this atomistic world that we're potentially moving to, where it's like, oh, I'm just building the app for myself. I mean, does the model ever say, no, Betty, that's a bad idea. You don't need that. Or are you continuously being glazed and therefore you're not in a position, to have a bit of constructive feedback about what would be valuable in the app?
Yeah. I'm going to guess that was Kent Beck. The most interesting thing that I heard him say that was kind of recently, there's been 2 kind of things I remember from him speaking in recent memory. One of them was, this is not pair programming because the system can't tell you no. And that's really not pair programming. And I agree. And the other thing was that you're more creative when someone tells you no, because now you either need to solve the problem differently, or maybe that wasn't a problem.
Our kids absolutely are great. As soon as we say no, they find a way around that, right?
Oh my gosh. This is how I learned that, kids already knew about proxy servers and all kinds of other stuff. Yeah.
And they'll teach each other.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, there's definitely, kids in InfoSec and LLMs that's just like one whole spectrum. They're the same, or rather, it's not a spectrum, it's a singleton. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
We think LLMs are good at, identifying how to get past our network controls. But yeah, kids, 100%. But yeah, do you ever find yourself being like, you know what? I've gone really far in a direction that maybe I needed some guidance.
Yeah.
Eddie, do you ever have bad taste? Is that?
Well, if it's personal taste for myself, does it matter?
That's a really good point.
If I'm going to just watch bad reality TV and be a trash panda, does it matter if it's just me having a moment to myself? No. But you ask a really interesting question, James. I think at work, yes. But I think that's what guardrails should do. I think in your personal life, as long as it's not breaking the law, I don't know why it matters.
I think it's really interesting when you're like, if it's not a product, does it matter? And I think that's a question that we're going to have to struggle with in a progressive delivery way, because if we get something customized enough, it's going to become so individual that it's unproductizable. is sort of like not many people wanted hot dog stand theme on their windows, but enough did that we had it. But what happens when we get, the weird edges of taste and people want to preserve that, but it's not a thing that could be in the product?
This podcast would 100% have been called The Weird Edges of Taste.
The weird edges of taste.
How do we end up with the third loop? The weird edges of taste is clearly...
It was right there. It was right there.
It was right there.
I mean, it's kind of like, are we going to end up with, like GeoCities 2.0? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Well, and I think that GeoCities was this flowering of creativity and also like really horrific web design. But so many people, so many women I know in technology came up through GeoCities because it was customizable, because they could make fan pages that were, objectively hideous, but also the idea that you could change a web page was the spark that lit their technology.
Well, I mean, it made the notion of the internet at the time so accessible to so many people who otherwise, nothing, right?
Yeah.
Replace internet with software, apps.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think for me, the defining line is it for like a business or is it for your personal use?
But the interesting intersection there was a great talk at Monkey Gross this year. We were all there, and Danilo Campos gave a great talk on how he, went and said he took some of the like commercial equipment that he had in his house, physical IoT or, systems. I think it was a heat pump. And he rewrote the controller software for it because the stuff that was provided by the manufacturer wasn't actually doing what he wanted it to.
But for his use.
Completely.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
But then it's a function of like, okay, well, he open sourced everything. It's up on GitHub repo. So if somebody else takes that and uses it, it's no longer just for his use. I mean, sure, person's actively taking it, choosing to use it, but it introduces an interesting idea of like, is the maker of a physical thing that is using software, are they required to prevent their end user consumers from doing things? Are they incented to, or they're incented not to?
John Deere has entered the chat.
Yeah.
That's an interesting example. That manufacturer could say like, you're not allowed to run other software on our stuff because then you're out of support.
Yeah.
As an example. But it doesn't prevent people from doing it. It just means like, hey, you're on your own now because you broke the terms of our contract in which you paid for. I think the key is money changing hands, because I think money changing hands comes with an expectation that the business will provide the individual as well as like, and so both sides are agreeing to a set of terms for that. The fact that Danilo open sourced it also means that there's no change of money. I have given you some tools. Go do with it what you will. It is not my fault if you do something and you fork this and you change it and your entire heating pump system breaks down. I am not your heat. I do not build this.
Oh no, the people that didn't pay for shit, those are the ones that expect the most.
I know.
If you paid for it, you value it, and therefore you think that the person that built it might have some vague value. If they open sourced it, you didn't pay for it, that you're like, where's my feature?
Yeah.
Why have you not built my feature?
I want to back up and say, hey, does anybody else remember a time when somebody made hardware work differently and then open sourced the results? Like maybe a printer. Like that's the origin of open source software, is like, I hate how this printer software works and I'm going to fix it for myself. And then make entire transnational movement out of it.
Although now what worries me, Heidi, is that I think I just realized something. We're all going to get sued. We're going to have like brother and HP all up in our business being like, why did you rewrite the controllers? Like
They can take it up with RMS.
Well, I mean, good. He would enjoy that conversation. But for the rest of us, heat pump rewriters it's actually, so progressive delivery, great. Okay, we're going to like roll things out, get the third loop, bringing the user into the thing. yeah, they're going to rebuild shit and mess things up and have an infinite entitlement. But yeah, John Deere, that's a good example. I mean, tractors are not hardware anymore. They are subscriptions for support of infrastructure. And you've just made me think about, where progressive delivery meets the right to repair legislation. Because, Apple likes you to have things when they want you to have them, right? As we've said, sort of Google and or in the book talking about like Gmail or Google Docs or, sort of Microsoft having a toggle where, you're subscribed to the better experience. But if you're, if Betty's going to build a new controller for her, like her controllers or
My heating system here or something. Yeah.
yeah, for Betty's heating system. That's the thing. If we're not rolling things out progressively and making the user happy, then the user is just going to go and rewrite the shit themselves. No, not everyone is getting a little campos. We're definitely not going to be like most users. It's not like, does this application work? I need to rewrite it in C. I mean, that's a whole, But on the other hand, yeah, I do think there's a question about if we don't meet the user where they are, their ability to go elsewhere now, the third loop can be cut off and taken somewhere else in a way that was just never even remotely possible before.
Yep.
But I think that there's also you look at it, I think open source companies have actually had some successes in this model where, like you think about it in the context of one of the things that I think successful open source companies have managed to do is engaging with those members of the community who do want something that is not built yet. And whether that's being willing and able to, kind of take their submissions and feature requests or, things that they've built on, a fork and being able to merge them back into the mainline. There's an opportunity, I think, as well, to actually use this as a mechanism for more deeply engaging with your users. I don't think it's necessarily straightforward or easy, but I think that, if people are enthusiastic, enthusiastic technologists that want to engage with your software and say, hey, look, I built this thing because I love your software base package, but I needed it to do this one other thing. And it might be useful to other people, but here I'm giving it back to you to just add to your entire platform for anyone to use.
So this is like the games mod pack. Like,
yeah.
Okay, somebody built a whack-ass thing for a Kerbal Space Program that does like real physics. That became part of the community conversation and spawned its own like modification of how the Kerbal Space Program people thought of themselves.
Yeah. I think that it's something that, there will be people who figure out how to do this. There will be those that don't, absolutely. But I think that this is one of those things where all of a sudden it opens up such a tremendous opportunity where it used to be that for you to contribute to open source, you had to be a developer. You had to, and that, kind of meant that open source projects that were geared towards developers or building things like developer tools had a ready supply of people that were willing to offer up time and effort. If you expand that to like contributors that is anybody who has like a desire to use your software for whatever task they need, suddenly has the ability to contribute, that's a potentially, a pretty huge opportunity.
So what you're saying is, it sounds super interesting. There could be companies that say like, here's our thing. Like we write our software, we do this. Could they make some element of that like somehow publicly accessible? But I'm going to challenge you, not on GitHub, because the average person doesn't know what that is. When I first started using GitHub, I did pull requests to myself because I didn't know how all the mechanics worked. And you know what? Everyone just talks in shorthand if you're asking engineers for help.
Mm-hmm.
If there is some magical way of like a GitHub type of thing is on the back end already, and you're exposing some of that through some like this kind of like chat interface for people to say like, I would love it if here it did this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a way of getting, because now the best part of what you can do with these new tools is like, it's kind of like building the UI part, right? Because that's what actual like non-technical end users like care about. They're like, I wanted to do this. It's all UI related things. If they could kind of like submit things, suggestions that way, I mean, write a whole thing, but just like, it looks like this. I would love it if here it did these 3 other things for me.
I mean, I think that we are, a few hours from the release of this podcast away from having that be like a pre-configured skill in Claude code, right? I mean, it's not a complex thing for, kind of Claude to come or some equivalent interface to come back and say, oh, like, do you have a GitHub account that you like already own? If you don't know what GitHub is, just say no. And I will go and I'm going to go create a GitHub account. I'm going to go do all the things and, to the appropriate repos without having to tell you what it is.
Why do you need the user to ever go do that?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that Claude would go do it for you. Right. So like, because of the way GitHub in particular is set up, you could actually create all of the account information that you need programmatically on the back end under the covers without ever having to involve the user. Now, it, raises the question or concern that I think GitHub's already facing recently where, all of a sudden the scale of their system is kind of at, a point where it wasn't designed for, a few 100 million extra users to be spontaneously creating PRs multiple times a minute. It begs the question of like, how are they going to continue to scale that interface and that programmatic access in a way that keeps it at least with 2 nines?
2 nines would be fancy.
I think now was your opportunity, Adam, because today you're wearing my "This is my sarcasm" font t-shirt. And I'm not sure you've really hit the mark, I'm afraid, on the podcast today. So maybe you could like reframe the 2 nines in a sarcastic way so that the sarcasm font could take effect, because you've been quite earnest. So, Adam, what do you think about GitHub's uptime of late?
I mean, I think that the 5/8 uptime that they've managed to maintain has been quite impressive over the past month.
I mean, agents are terrible things. They generate load like I was about to go. I wasn't just going to do the F word there. That was going to be we were off the range of a family show, my friends. But yeah, it is really hard when, to your point, the amount of just the sheer scale of work being done by agents and the backends needing to process that. And yeah, GitHub is definitely in the front line of that. So,
and I mean, I think, look, I want to be clear, like, sarcasm aside, huge hug ups to the, GitHub folks that are trying to like deal with this. Like, this is not
100%.
We're talking about a rather significant step function in the order of magnitude of traffic that they are having to manage and mitigate. And, like, you talk to people who are on the, open source maintainer side, and they're like, yeah, and the worst part about it is that the vast majority is complete crap and trash.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It is hot slop that I do not even want, but don't have the tooling, don't have the mechanisms to be able to say, oh, well, I only want it from agents I trust. I mean, like, what does that look like? What is it? So I think that there are so many things that, like we've talked about before on this, it's like that technological jerk, right, is moving things so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden we're in this situation where we don't have the right tools. And I don't think we even necessarily know what the right tools are for some of the changes that these new aspects of software have created for us.
It's like cars need windshields now because we're going so fast that the wind makes it hard to see.
Mm-hmm. Heidi, your analogy is great. And it's because it's exactly like we have this one thing that's like, wow, but then all the infrastructure around it isn't there for this era. So it's not just about like, hey, GitHub hug ups. It's just like everything is going to get strained because, it's like we have these tiny little pipes and we just like, open the dam.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, why is everything flooding? Oh, because our pipes are like, only 2 inches like big. You know what I mean? We weren't ready if we weren't set up for this. So it's a whole lot of everything.
Can we ever be set up for change that big?
No, I don't think so. it's like saying we can predict the future, then maybe that innovation wasn't as big a step function.
Yeah.
I'm going to say like internet's kind of like this idea of the internet and all this online shopping, right?
No one was ready.
Literally like the logistics wasn't ready. You know what I mean? Like,
Which is fascinating because like Sears had been delivering freaking houses by train, by mail order. Like a huge portion of the country was getting stuff from Wells Fargo and Sears. And then we deprecated that infrastructure strongly. And then we wished we had it back.
but even with getting houses delivered, so you large capital things, to then say like, you're going to now get like your pet supplies delivered daily in small nuggets, that dramatically increased the volume.
Yeah.
And then I think even if we had like, so say that we had a national infrastructure for that, the house delivery, they probably weren't set up at the volume.
No.
Because you can't deploy all those rigs that would have been delivering houses to then dog food one day, like cat food the other day, like, you know what I mean? That's just too much.
Right. But we did have like morning and evening newspapers. We did have 2 or 3 times a day mail service in the cities. Like, I think we did have the volume capacity for that at one point, but the car revolution changed that. And then because of that structure, now we need to rebuild delivery back in it. Anyway, I just think everything time is a flat circle. And I think that we're going to look at this current surge of AI as sort of like the permanent September of the internet, which is a thing that old internet people talk about. It used to be that there was this huge surge of newbies to the message boards in September when people got to college and got their first internet account. And there was like mass misbehavior all through September because people hadn't learned the community norms. And when internet sort of democratized and became not just the venue of college students, it was called the permanent September because there were always people who did not understand the community norms in a community. And I think that in the same way, this AI revolution is like the permanent September of app building, because there's a lot of norms that we expect from apps that we consume, and we're really offended when they don't exist. But the people who made them didn't know they needed to.
Oh my God, that's a whole nother book that you've got there, Heidi. That's intense. But yeah, this is the first time that since we began this journey, when I started thinking about progressive delivery in the context of Amazon Prime. Like, do we deliver in chunks? Do we get a thing and say we don't want this in a way that we can send it back? Do we end up with, like me, a bunch of things that we meant to send back and then didn't actually send back?
And they're by the door.
Oh yeah, no, I'm 100% gonna return this item.
Yeah.
And then 6 months later, you're like, what is that item doing there? Why did I not return this item?
But it lives by the door now. It's just my pet wrong printer cartridge.
Exactly. It's the place where we put the envelopes.
But also, like, do we have an Amazon delivery day? Like, I don't want things coming in a trickle. I feel bad about that, like environmentally, or I can only be home. Like, I only want things on Tuesday.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a whole thing thinking about like progressive delivery meets physical delivery.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, you look also at examples like Amazon in terms of their infrastructure processes and how they actually will do item movement based on your search history. So like, even if you don't buy something, there's a good chance that they're actually sending an item to a local delivery area, local warehouse, so that it's ready for when you want it and you can get same day shipping. Or, like this goes back to, one of Heidi's favorite talks that she used to give on disaster preparedness with Waffle House. So for those of you that aren't familiar, Heidi, why don't you explain just briefly?
So Waffle House has an emergency response center and their own weather forecasters, and it's all extremely sophisticated. And what they do is they station trucks outside the blast radius of the hurricane that's incoming so that as soon as the roads clear, they can resupply stores that were in the zone of destruction. And they have on-call teams that serve the same purpose. They are prepared to make sure that as soon as possible, they can feed people warm food.
They're famous
And
for this.
they're famous for it.
Unequivocally better than FEMA at this point.
Yes.
No, they're famous for this as the outcomes that they deliver on this.
Right. And it's very valuable to them as both a community thing, and I think it's part of their values, but also they're investing in this proximity because they know where they're going to be needed. In the same way that like maybe Amazon ships things, and in the same way that if you're a local hardware store, in the summer, you stock screens and mosquito repellent, and in the winter, okay, in my area, you stock snow throwers and sidewalk salt. Like that's what's relevant to the people at the same time. Nobody's going to buy sidewalk salt in July. It's not a thing. You don't pre-stock it. But the delivery thing that I think is interesting is when you read a Victorian novel, people are having near real-time conversations by postal mail. Like you'll send a note in the morning and someone will send you a note back at noon and you'll meet in the evening. And that kind of like super rich communications in the physical space is fascinating to me because it's almost impossible to do now and costs the earth. And so what is it that we are not looking at that costs the earth? If we lost email, could we function? Like lots of teams are like, oh yeah, we have Slack, it'll be fine. Would it really? How's your paycheck come in?
Yeah.
I will say that for the last 2 years, I have barely looked at email.
Mm-hmm.
I had to put a note to remind myself to look at email because everything was in Slack.
But, you think about that in the context of communications outside of work.
But yes, that was the where it fell down. Like you couldn't talk to anybody that didn't work inside your own company because you would forget.
So I've been spending a lot of time in Mexico, and I do not like WhatsApp. But if you want to do anything down here, you got to be on WhatsApp.
Mm-hmm.
You want to order a pizza, you want to talk to friends, plan a party, get the news half the time. That's where people are.
Yep.
Co-signed European.
Outside of the US. Yeah.
Europe is 100% WhatsApp.
It's not a choice.
I wonder if there's a better skin for it. Like, I think what I hate is the way that it organizes messages. And maybe I just need to break my soul to it.
Either that or you just need to ask Betty to code you a new interface for it. No.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
No.
No, Kim's going to do it.
I'm not in the business of having customers.
Kim's going to do it.
Yeah.
That's going to be Kim's vibe coding projects.
When you create a new WhatsApp interface,
Yes.
do it.
Yeah, I just want the interface. I want the underlying message protocol to stay the same, but its message threading is pants, and I don't love it.
Okay. We don't want to use WhatsApp, but Kim's going to create a new front end. But yeah, Betty, let me ask you, as a seasoned community builder, marketer, the world is changing so dramatically in terms of user expectations, in terms of platform capabilities, in terms of who the developer is. How do you see things? And, look, if you're even able to predict the next 2 weeks, that will be amazing. But what are you excited by and how do you see some of this stuff playing out in terms of just the new ways that we can deliver applications and services to users and maybe what the industry is going to look like going forward?
For me, it's kind of a bit of you guys have progressive delivery. And I think that is a way to think about broadcasting out as an organization, broadcasting out. I think of this user empowerment movement. I think that's what I think this is, in that it is kind of like progressive consumption.
Mm.
I get to define what I want to use and when. It's a little bit of I wanted to say it's like the gig economy of apps, but that's not quite it. But it's a bit of company, corporation, business. You don't have to dictate to me exactly how I do this thing or what I use to do this thing.
Uh-huh.
I may still like the thing that you do because I need the chassis. I need the, some percentage of the way there. But my progressive consumption of that is going to be like much more individual. It's like the parts of the Venn diagram of the ICP that do not overlap. And I should be able to have that.
Right.
And maybe that part of the burden can be mine. Doesn't have to be yours, company, because that does not make sense as some sort of like scale economy for a business at all.
Right. It doesn't make sense for you. If you've got 1 million users, it doesn't make sense for you building bespoke offerings for every single one of them.
Yeah. It's a little bit like I was looking up gig economy the other day, and it's part of that definition, but in a slightly different way. I think it could still be, we have opportunity to come up with a name because, you got to name it for it to be true. I did see that on one of your other transcripts.
Yeah. I think that it's a personalization world. It's, bespoke to self.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference between tailored for you and bespoke, which is like a tailor is opinionated and will make changes that make the you inside the suit appear different on the outside. A bespoke suit is just, it's your measurements, the way that they are presented to basically the machine. And what we're saying is we can't all afford tailors, but maybe we could all afford bespoke, where something fits us properly instead of us having to adapt ourselves to fit it.
That's deep.
Mm-hmm. I also see this as like I get to define what it is.
Yeah.
Versus like someone else tells me, but this is what it should be. Yeah.
It's GeoCities and MySpace all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Differently. But yeah, all those led to something else, right?
That actually makes me feel really good about it. Because so many people in this industry, people that didn't come from a normal computer science background, got their backgrounds in GeoCities, like that was, yeah. And again, MySpace, like the introduction to web design and maybe a less gendered cohort. So, man, I'm really wanting to drop the F-bomb, but I'm definitely here for it. If that's where we're at now, then that gives me much happiness and optimism for the future.
Yeah.
Betty,
Yeah.
who else should we talk to?
So I was thinking about this. And one, I have a name for one person. And the two, I have a second recommendation, but I think I don't know who, but I think it's, if you all know someone in those organizations, that would be important. First, my good friend, Laura Taco. So she's at AWS now, but before she did a ton of developer productivity, like research, and then also like it, her work at DX, and then worked with a lot of these engineering leaders about like being more like effective on output, right? Delivery. So I think it'd be super interesting to see how did those organizations think about that third loop of it. And is it changing from her research and all of her work with those engineering leaders? I think that would be interesting. And then the other one is, I think y'all should talk to somebody in a consumer company. Because I think so much of like all of us where we have worked at is kind of like tech companies for B2B tech. The mindset on that is super different than B2C.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that third loop of who that is. Imagine if you're like, I don't know, you build like a social app. It's anybody. Like I listened to like the opener of Lenny's podcast. That's as far as I got because, I don't always listen to work-related things. But he had the founder of Snapchat on there, and he just gave like a quick little bit. And I was like, oh, yeah, you all should talk to somebody from like a pure mass market consumer company, because I think that would be super interesting on how they think about their loop. Or someone like Snap was like, they didn't do the things the way that every other social platform did. And so what does that mean for third loop considerations?
Love it.
Nice.
Well, thank you once again. Really appreciate your insights and looking forward to seeing what you build next.
Yay. It was so lovely to chat with you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Betty.
That's all we have time for today. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of The Third Loop. The Third Loop is brought to you by Heavybit, the leading investor in enterprise infrastructure. For more information, visit heavybit.com.